Welcome to our Christmas Day holiday special of Ability Awakens, a podcast about provocative insights in the arts of therapy, behavior, and spirituality as meaning-making with Dr. Joseph Bowers and Dr. Duane Kennedy.
Merry Christmas, Joseph.
Merry Christmas, Duane.
It's that time of year again, Joseph. Ho, ho, ho.
Absolutely, and Merry Christmas to you, Duane.
I want to just hear some of your reflections, Joseph, on Christmas past.
Christmas past. One of the things I was remembering earlier today was that my dad would start Christmas in October. As we were growing up, he would pull out the old Christmas lights, and back then the lights were all the old type with fuses. He would have to check them all individually, make sure they were working okay, obviously, because they're a fire hazard. And in Canada, they were put onto a real tree, and we would always go out before Christmas and find the Christmas tree and put it up as a family. And anyway, so the nights were getting longer, doing activities through the evening, just decorations and colored streamers out of strips of paper, and we would hang them all through the house, and a huge collection of homemade Christmas ornament that we would put on the tree, and decorating the whole house. It was quite an experience. We always look forward to it every year. How about you, Duane? What kind of memories do you have of Christmas in Australia?
I think it's interesting hearing your northern thoughts of Christmas and your experience of Christmas, because naturally our days were getting longer, coming into the peak of summer, and it's quite hot and the days are long, and my grandparents would take us out and we would get our Christmas tree the day before Christmas, so Christmas Eve, and we'd bring it home, and that's an Australian pine. It was native to Australia. We'd bring it home, and my grandmother would get us to make strings of coloured popcorn, and she would tie individual lollies on it, because we didn't really have Christmas decorations, but those trees were very symbolic of the celebration of what we had and the celebration of what you could actually enjoy on Christmas Day too.
That sounds beautiful.
It was beautiful when I think back to those moments, and I think my grandparents made everything quite magical, because everything wasn't so accessible as it is in this day and age, where you can go get whatever you want on any given day. Christmas was very, very special, and it was just a time of year of celebrating, if that was with large amounts of family being around or small amounts of family being around, or and just celebrating the small amounts of things that we had, and that went even for the meal that we celebrated. I remember one Christmas that my mother had to cook up a rabbit and we had rabbit and baked vegetables and jellies, and my grandmother actually said to my mother at the end of the meal, "Hey Gracie, that was the best chicken that I've ever had."
Right. Just didn't realise they were having rabbit.
And that was just extraordinary, because that just gave you an example of the times and the challenges that families faced back then. It wasn't a given that you were going to sit down to a ham, or a given that you were going to sit down to a roast. It was right. Making the best out of the opportunities that we had.
You're reminding me that we got through several winters by my dad going out into the forest and ending up hunting a deer, which would keep us going through the whole winter, the whole family. Of course, that's what we would have at Christmas as well. And it was exciting at Christmas time in Canada to actually get a fresh orange and an apple in our stockings.
I think one of the most amazing memories, because my grandfather gave my 3 older brothers a handful of hay each. And he said, "Okay, boys, it's time to go up to the shed, and they're all waiting in anticipation of thinking, oh my God, we're going to get a horse each. And my grandfather had crafted 3 push bikes for my older brothers. And they were just ecstatic to receive the bikes that he had actually built out of other bikes. And this was their Christmas present from him.
That's amazing.
It is quite amazing when we reflect on our experiences of our childhood, and that was definitely the magic, what we would call the magic of Christmas, is that it didn't have to be new, or it was pretty much recycled. And they talk about recycling today, or up with recycling. When you really think about Christmas in our grandparents' day, they knew how to utilise and make the best out of everything that they had, and that was to share with others too.
Absolutely. I remember some of the most precious gifts that we cherish over the years were handmade by different family members. My grandmother would just crochet little Christmas ornaments for the tree, and then my oldest sister would crochet some Christmas ornaments and make them by hand, and I still have some of those that I treasure over the years. And I remember one year I made just a piece of pine that I sanded back the bark of it, had cut the log in half and put some holes in it for holding candles. So it became a centerpiece at the table. She still uses it all these years later. I probably was quite young when I made that. Things like that are very special handmade objects we kind of treasure in the family.
One of the amazing part about Christmas, it's just not about Christmas Day either, it's about that Christmas period. I think it's the season of just having time away from school, time away from work, and it didn't matter, like my grandfather made, and my grandmother and my mum and dad would join in the process of making that experience enlightening. Boxing Day became such extraordinary experience too. My grandfather always grew his vegetables out on Sandy Creek, and so we're in the middle of summer, and he had planted a garden out on the river because it was self-watering, self-maintained, and he would grow watermelons out there. And on Boxing Day he'd load the car up with watermelons, and we'd head out to one of the rivers and we'd go swimming, and we'd get out and we'd sit on the banks of the river eating watermelon. We'd have it all over ourselves, and he'd say, oh, get down to the river and wash your faces and everything. And it was just magical because there was so much to it, but there was nothing to it at the same time. There was no expectations of any more gifts or any expectations of desiring anything. Everything was just being together.
That's so awesome to hear of Christmas in Australia. It's so different from having a white Christmas in Nova Scotia, Canada, treasuring the snow and kind of being sad during those years that it didn't snow. One year I asked Santa for a pair of cross-country skis, and this is during the 1980s, and it was actually the first winter we didn't have any snow. It rained the whole winter, and I was so sad I couldn't get out and use my cross-country skis. Most of the winters of my childhood, we had a lot of snow, and it would pile up, and oh my God, it'd be like 6, 8, 10 feet tall. You'd barely get your car into your driveway kind of thing. It was just piled up like crazy. But it was a great time of fun and excitement and exploring the world in a snow landscape. The woods and the lakes freezing over. You could walk across a whole lake and take your snowshoes out and walk in the forest. It was incredible and beautiful.
Just sitting and reflecting on our stories, I just see how each year is very, very different. They don't have to be the same, and I think too, as I've grown older, those times have become quieter, and it's nice to sit with those memories, and it's nice to sit with a few other people. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. It's just enjoying a meal at this time now, and it's enjoying the company and knowing that you can just fully relax and remove yourself from the rest of life, of the busyness that you're caught up in throughout the year.
I've noticed with you and your family that your Christmases tend to be pretty flexible. And I think back over the years that the traditions that I grew up with and whatnot in our family are probably, equally flexible in one way, but at another level, it's taken me many years to sort of let go of many traditions and take a simpler approach to Christmas. And I hear what you're saying. I really appreciate that nowadays. It's just a laid-back approach, just a contemplative approach, I think, to Christmas, and more thoughtful.
And I noticed that a lot of people, even if they are by themselves for Christmas, they, in a lot of ways in this day and age, they enjoy themselves because they either go out for like hot chips and fish and they just sit in the park, or it's a choice. The Christmas season and that break time is very, very individually and different for each of us. And it's not about loneliness, it's about really celebrating time to be away from the world in that fast-paced experience, no matter what we're doing.
How true is that? For many, many years now, after Christmas, I usually take my annual retreat. And that goes up until New Year's Day, pretty much, if not a few days more sometimes. And that retreat sort of just gives me the time to reflect on the year, think about the year that's coming in and the future a little bit, and just to appreciate what's happened and what we've accomplished and where life is taking us.
Just pausing and just thinking about everything is incredible when we just pull ourselves back and take ourselves into those spaces. Like Joseph was just saying, that it's about reflecting on the year and reflecting about our experiences and having reflections of our childhood, and it's just really bringing ourselves into the moment of where we're at, wherever that may be. And if it's somebody that's providing us a meal, no matter where that may be, if it's a club or like I said, fish and chips in the park, or if it's with family, or it's such a variety today that we can choose to be so different. Or if you're having a barbecue, you can have it by yourself, or you can have it with several people, or with 45 people, or it doesn't really matter how we celebrate that moment.
It's another great excuse this season to actually engage in spontaneous acts of kindness, and it's probably the one time of year that people don't look at you like you should be put into a mental health institution for actually being kind. And I think of situations where I've made cakes or Christmas cookies or whatever. It's a bit weird for a guy to do, but hey, why not? I might give a tin of biscuits to a neighbor that I maybe haven't talked to or seen for several months, and it lights up their world, and they're quite surprised. And just because it's the holiday season, it kind of gives you an excuse to be kind to people and to reach out. It's kind of a nice time of year like that.
And it's a different type of giving. So we can give all year in our workplaces, but when Joseph was saying when you get to Christmas, it's a totally good excuse to do something nice for somebody else. So I guess what we're getting at is that, like, no matter what we're doing or where we're at, or if we're sitting quietly and we're just having a box of biscuits that somebody's made us with a cup of tea, and that's our Christmas day, we should be liberated by that, because we live in places that are extraordinary to start off with. That's just a gift in itself. Just being in a safe place is a gift.
Absolutely. I think you were about to introduce one of our songs that we're sharing today.
So the carol that we're going to introduce is the Huron carol.
That's correct. You said it right. Good on you. It's had several composers that have been involved in its composition, going back to the colonial French days in Canada. It was rewritten around the turn of the century, I think, and then I've basically rewritten it again. In our family, it was one of my dad's favorite Christmas songs. Of course, it's referring to the Huron Indian nation. It rings true for the Mi'kmaq Nation, which is affiliated with my family and our heritage. It's quite a meaningful tune. We quite love it, so we're quite excited to share it with you this Christmas. 'Twas in the moon of winter time, when all the birds had fled, that mighty Gitche Manitou sent angel choirs instead. Before their lights the stars grew dim, and wandering hunters heard the hymn. Jesus, your King is born, Jesus is born, in excelsis gloria. Within a lodge of silver bark, the tender babe was found. A sacred robe of rabbit skin enwrapped his beauty round. Two spirit hunter braves drew nigh. The angel song rang loud and high. Jesus, your King is born, Jesus is born, in excelsis gloria. Sacred moon of winter time, great grandmother fair, your radiance of blessing on helpless infant there. Elders, chiefs, and children bow with deer and wolf, great bear and lynx. Jesus, your King is born, Jesus is born, in excelsis gloria. O children of the forest free, O sons of Manitou, the holy child of earth and heaven is born today for you. Come kneel before the radiant boy who brings you beauty, peace, and joy. What joy! Jesus, your King is born, Jesus is born, in excelsis gloria.
So just sharing those songs, it just is a celebration.
With a heavy sigh. You were just saying it's been such an incredible year that we've been there. We're both exhausted and silly at the same time.
While you drink your
Kombucha.
kombucha. So here we go. Christmas is for everyone. People get stumped by thinking like it's for Christians. It's a time of celebration, a time of family, a time of sharing, and that doesn't have to be wrapped up in a box. Sharing is just being together, or sharing is being on the phone, or whatever it may be.
We totally agree, and thank you so much, Dwayne, for being with us today and on this very Christmas day, the day of Christmas 2023. We wish you and your family every peace and blessing. And to our listeners, we appreciate your time and your consideration in spending this precious moment with us. It's a sacred time of family and sharing and of solitude and peace. We wish you all of these things in togetherness and joy and in aloneness and in your own peacefulness of heart and mind. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We will end, for those who have requested a song or two this Christmas, with Amazing Grace, a metaphor of openness and tenderness and kindness to the heart, mind, and spirit.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. Oh, this grace has brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead us home when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. This grace is precious and sweet to me, and gives my heart such joy. Oh, grace has filled me with endless joy, and gives my heart this song. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. I see.
I'm your host, Dr. Joseph Randolph Bowers. We are Ability Awakens podcast, a provocative, insightful show about the arts of therapy, behavior, and spirituality as meaning-making. Thank you for welcoming us in and for listening and being with us today.